Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series and our phenomenal paralegal podcast. And today we are joined by Chere Estrin from all the way from Los Angeles, California. So, Sherry, first of all, thank you so much for joining us, and perhaps you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am the CEO of Estrin Legal Staffing. And what we do is we provide staffing for attorneys, paralegals, legal assistants throughout the United States and actually throughout the world. I have done some international placements as well. And we have a sister company, and that's called the OLP, or the Organization of Legal Professionals. And that company provides technology training for lawyers and paralegals. And I'm the author of 14, count 'em, 14 books, which takes my time and I absolutely love. I've been on CBS, the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, Forbes, all kinds of wonderful media. And I never thought I would do that when I was a paralegal in a small firm in Seattle, Washington. So my career has seen a wonderful, wonderful launch. I'm very happy in it, and I'm very happy to be doing things for the legal community.
So, Sherry, maybe you could tell us, how did you go from being a paralegal to all the great, wonderful things you just shared? Like, what sort of caused that sort of pivot, and any insight you can have for others who are thinking about being more entrepreneurial. I'm not sure if people are ready to write 14 books, but maybe one, right? So, what kind of brought that upon?
Well, actually, what happened was I became a paralegal manager in an AmLaw firm, AmLaw meaning the top 100 law firms in the United States or revenue producing law firms in the United States. And I noticed that my job oh my God, I did everything, the recruiting, the onboarding, the budgets, the training, the workflow, everything. But the part that I loved the most was recruiting. And I was sitting there one day thinking, what am I doing? I'm an entrepreneur. And I just kind of came to realization as to where my real talent was. So I left the firm and I took them as a first client and I went out and I opened CB Estrin and Associates. I had 2,000 US dollars that I started the firm with. I rented a broom closet, literally a broom closet in an appellate firm. It had no windows, okay, and they really did used to hang the mops there. I had the hooks where they used to hang the mops, and I started my first business, and the rest was history. What made me decide to do that was I used to be in the theater. And I put together shows, Broadway musical reviews. And I thought, let's talk about transferable skills, okay? Starting a theater company is getting the actors, right? Starting a company is getting the employees. Starting the theater company is getting the play. Starting the business is getting the program that you're going to put in, and you get them both up and running, and the reviews come in. It's no different. So basically, I used my transferable skills to start my business. I grew it to $5 million in 2.5 years, and I sold it to a $5 billion company. I ran their division for a few years, and I hated it. I was crying in the shower every morning because people were telling me what to do. I don't know. And so I left that, left a lot of money on the table, and went back and became an entrepreneur. And what I did do was I also realized that I loved writing and that I could help people through my writing. I have a blog, it's called the Estrin Report. And so I wrote a series of books on legal careers and hundreds, literally hundreds of articles. And what propelled me? I love what I do. My philosophy is you have to get up in the morning and love it. Get up in the morning and love it, or don't do it. And so that's what really propelled me. I love what I do. End of story.
Perfect. That's great. And again, if you love what you do, then you don't work a day in your life, right? So,
That's true. That's
um,
very true. Well, some days, let's not be crazy. Some days you could barely make it to the end of the day,
that's
right?
true. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
that's
me, it's
true.
like Friday evening here, so I'm like, oh, it's almost the weekend here. But I think, Sherry, what I wanted to go through is sort of how that staffing process looks like, and
Hmm.
how do you kind of find, like the matchmaking, right? Like, how do you
Hmm.
find the right person for the right role, and how does that work? Or how do you get involved in terms of recruitment there, and what are some strategies that come with that?
Well, I don't really know what the paralegal hiring market is like in Canada, but in the US, it's the tightest candidate market we've ever seen. Candidates are few and far between. So it's not that people are moving because they need a job. It's because they need to be convinced that it's okay to leave where they are. So what's happening in the United States is that we have to what we call source for candidates and convince candidates why the job that we have for them is better than the one that we have. It's not always money. Okay, it's a lot of it is job satisfaction. A lot of people want to leave because of management. That's the number one complaint about why people want to leave. And how do we go about it? Well, you have to know your client. Okay, you have to know what they call culture, of which, if you ask somebody what is the culture, most of them don't know how to define it. Okay, they say, well, okay, let me think. Teamwork. Yeah, that's it. We do a lot of teamwork here. It's a fast pace. Okay, yeah, we're fast paced. Well, that doesn't mean anything. Okay, what kind of person fits in? That's what we're looking for. So we're looking for a culture match, right? And what we're looking for now is not so much personality, truthfully, it's do you know the job? Do you have the skills for the position? Do you know numbers? Do you know the law? Do you know site checking? Do you know, I mean, whatever the job calls for, do you have those skills? And the worst thing anybody can say is, no, but I'm a fast learner. Well, of course you're a fast learner. I don't know anybody who says on an interview, every time I site check, I screw up. I don't know anybody who says that. Okay. I really don't. And I don't know anybody who says, yeah, when I went to learn LexisNexis, God, everybody else got certified, but somehow 6 months later, I was just kind of trekking along there. No, you don't. What you have to come in and you have to hit the ground running because there are not enough people to train you. So firms are looking for people that they don't have to train, even if you're an entry level. Okay, they don't have to train you. They're looking for people who love the law. They're looking for people who feel that they have a purpose, that being a paralegal provides a purpose. Some paralegals will tell you, oh, what is paralegal being? It's putting a lot more money in the shareholders' pockets. If that's the way you feel about being a paralegal, it's time to get out. Time to get out because firms are not looking for that. They're looking for people who are dedicated, who love what they do, who take the initiative and aren't waiting to be trained. They go out and seek it themselves, become trained, and look for the next assignment. So people aren't, it isn't about money. It isn't about getting somebody cheaper. It isn't about not hiring people who are older. It's about passion, perception, and purpose. That's what they're looking for.
The three P's there.
The three
Uh,
P's, right?
so yeah, so I mean, and I'm building on that, right? Because I mean, I have
Mhm.
obviously some paralegal students, newly licensed paralegals, and again, we're up here in Ontario, Canada, and other places that may be listening. But building on those three P's, what are other things, or what are ways maybe that if you are looking for, and you're saying, look at the market right now, if you're looking for something, how do you stand out? Or what are things that you've seen when the employers are going through potentials that really jumps out at them, that can be things, the easy improvements that can be made, or highlighting what you already have that share or show value.
Well, the first thing is the resume, and everything today is visual. And so those people who are still using the old formats, the old Courier type, Times Roman, and basically typing their resume on a piece of blank paper are not going to get a job. Everything is Instagram these days, okay? And it's pointed. Nobody reads. Nobody reads. So you have to be able to capture what it is that you're all about, your skills, and a little bit about your personality in your resume. Once you get through the door, assuming that you get through the door, you have to give an interview that completely defies everything that you have been taught. Why am I saying that? It's because what happens is the employer is going to ask standard questions. What are your weaknesses? What do you know about us? What are your strengths? Okay, they're going to ask those questions. And what are you going to answer? You're going to answer what you read in that $10 book you bought at the airport on interviewing, okay? The hardest 25 questions for interviewing. So you're going to give back the same thing. Well, I'm a hard worker, I'm a team player, and you're going to give back my weaknesses are, and you're going to take a perceived weakness and turn it into a strength and tell them how you fixed it. Wrong. Okay, that's wrong. What you need to do is to be original. You need to be able to say, well, on my last position, I was known for how fast I could site check any given motion, any given brief. On my last job, what I did was I led the team, helped lead the team to trial because I found all the hot documents. So what you need to do is to give examples of how you were a winner. That's what they're looking for. Because what happens is if they give the standard questions and you give the standard answers, both of you go out of there saying, hey, that was a great interview, but nobody has any content. Nobody has any substance. And that's where firms fall down, is that they don't know how to interview. And candidates, because I mean, how often do you interview? Not that often, not that often. So it's not like you're that experienced at it. So you think that these books that you read are what you should be saying. And what happens is you could get in over your head because you really don't understand the job, or the firm can make a bad hire. And that's not what either one of you want to do.
Yeah, so building on that, I mean, I think how do you find like that sort of confidence, but not, having this ego, right? How do you find this sort of way to self-promote without it coming across as, self-promotion? I don't know if that makes sense, but like how do you find that balance? Because I find that especially when you're saying how you're a champion in those areas, how do you do that without, again, and also delivering it naturally, right? That you're just not just reciting a bunch of awards or things like that. And as somebody that has a number of awards, right? That how do you kind of organically weave that in a conversation uh, to show your strengths and show that natural ability to highlight those strengths?
JP, you sound like you were born and raised as a girl, and I'll tell you why. Women are told, okay, don't brag, right? Women are told it's not nice to brag. That's what women are told. That's what I was told growing up. That's what a lot of women are told. A lot of men are not told that. Okay, they're taught to compete. So they're a little bit more jaded when it comes to talking about their experiences. But as a whole, are you really bragging? Tell me, JP, what are you the best at in the whole wide world? What are you the best at? Anything,
I would say, putting on like illegal events in the paralegal community in Ontario. I say Justin and I have been really doing really well. We had
right?
this big ceremony yesterday. That was the first of the entire, 20 years to have it at the Law Society building. So we kind of had this
Wow.
idea and this vision. And, I would say that right now, we're in the sort of top tier of putting on those kinds of events and making them affordable.
I did not notice any hesitation in you telling me how great you are at putting these events on. Did not notice any hesitation. So if you take that attitude, because you know, JP, how good you are at that, right? I mean, you got me on the show, right? When I'm on the show. But look how well you said that, and look how confident you were. You have to be the same way when you're talking about yourself in your job, right? It's not bragging. It's merely talking about what skills you have. You would not say, I'm not very good at putting on an event and only two people showed. You wouldn't tell me that, right? You would, I don't think you would, right? But as you told me that, you smiled and you lit up and you felt good. That's how you talk about what your experiences are on the job. Same way, same attitude.
Well, that's a great sort of way to put it. And, I just kind of, put me on the spot and I'm like, well, that's how
Sure.
you roll, right? And I think maybe sometimes we overthink that, right? We're too worried about what it is I want to say. Can I say this? Can I do this? And then you're all lost in your thoughts, right? You're not
Sure.
just, obviously don't just come in randomly and be like, well, like let's see how it's gonna go. But what do you think is something maybe then on that? What are some of the mistakes that whether paralegal specifically or any
Mhm.
of the people that they make in going through these processes that end up, well, it didn't work out, and how can they turn those no's to yeses in the future?
They undersell themselves. Totally undersell themselves. So I'll get a resume and I'll think, this person looks pretty good, and I'll call them in or Zoom them for an interview, and I'll start questioning them. Tell me about this particular job. And even though it's on the resume, I don't care. I don't care. I want them to tell me in their own words what they did. And I'll say, tell me a little bit about your job at Coffee and Wines. What did you do there? And then they'll start telling me. And usually a whole lot of assignments and wins and admirable achievements will show up that are not in the resume. Why aren't they in the resume? Okay. Well, they'll say, and this is what they say, I thought I had to keep it to one page. Okay. Well, no. Okay. Just don't go over 2 pages. But let's if you have that much of experience and you want to tell me about it, let's put it in. So they undersell themselves. And then in the interview, they're afraid to speak up and talk about what it is that they have done well because they think they're bragging. You're not bragging, you're merely informing the interviewer what it is that you can do. So the biggest mistake I see is when people undersell themselves. And they think, yeah, they think I'm not, I don't want to brag, but that employer is sitting there saying, I really want to hire this person. Give me a reason to hire you. And that's basically what you have to do. Another mistake I see is that people exaggerate what their experience is, and then they get in on the job and they can't do the job, right? And in particular, you have to be very, very careful about putting your resume through AI or Chat GPT. Why? Because not only does it hallucinate, right? It can play down your skills instead of saying I drafted complex pleadings. It'll say I compiled legal documents, right? So it kind of cleanses it. And people think because AI wrote it, it must be right. It's not. Okay, it's not. It's only a tool for grammar. Believe me, it's only a tool for grammar. So they use that, and then they don't get the job because the resume doesn't really reflect what it is that they do. So that's a big mistake that's being done right now. Huge, huge.
Yeah, so speaking of AI, well, how kind of in that usage, right? I mean, if let's say on your resume, the filter is going to be AI sometimes on the other side, right? I mean, of which
Mhm.
people to take. So is
Mhm.
that, as you were just saying, you're just going to play right into the filter because it's detecting itself almost in terms of that, or how do you kind of look at that
Yeah.
process and I mean maybe even more broadly AI in legal practice, right? In terms of what are some of the skills that are still needed in spite of the fact that we do have whether it's ChatGPT even ways to kind of streamline things.
Well, first of all, let me tell you my experience. I was writing a new biography, right? Because I have 2 new books coming out. One is called Power Plays for Legal Professionals, Strategies to Move Your Career Forward. And the other is the Paralegal Job Search Handbook. So I'm adding these 2 books to my bio and I put it in AI and it comes up. And there are 3 books there that I don't recognize. And I'm thinking, God, I must be getting old. I don't remember writing these books. Oh my God, there goes my memory. Till I realized it was not telling the truth. Okay. It was hallucinating and telling me that I'd written these 3 books that I never wrote. So, what you have to do is to be very careful. You do need to pick up keywords. Okay. You can put in the job description and then put your resume in and have the AI, or have AI, not the AI, have AI match your resume to the job description, but you have to be very careful and you have to make sure that it's true. And that's part of the problem with AI and resumes today. So it's okay to use it, but use it very carefully. And hopefully someday it'll get straightened out, like cars that drive themselves. Someday it'll stop running into buses. It'll straighten itself out. But it's very, very important. You can use AI, but use it cautiously, very cautiously.
So yeah, you mentioned obviously the upcoming book, Power Plays for Legal Professionals: Strategies to
Mhm.
Advance Your Career. So maybe you could share what are some strategies that maybe we haven't touched on. I know obviously there's many different areas and different places and different stages in your career, but maybe you can share one or two that you found particularly important to compile into this book, and give us a little teaser of
Sure.
what the rest can hold.
Sure. One day, paralegals, while they're in the job, wake up and realize they're not going to make partner. Okay, it's not going to happen here. They're not going to make partner. Why? Because I don't know about Canada, but in the United States, paralegals cannot become partners of a law firm. But how do you get ahead in what is continuously called a dead-end career? Once a paralegal, always a paralegal, that's as high as you can go. Not necessarily. You can invent anything in the paralegal field, including a new title. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, the first thing is giving your attorney a status report every Friday. Pick a day, okay, and say in the wines and coffee case, I finished the motion to compel, and I'm getting ready to go to trial, and I'm doing this. And then what do you do? Then what you do is you say, 12 depositions came in. I'd like to summarize them, but in addition to summarizing them, I'd like to do an analysis of testimony inconsistencies. Okay, so what have you just done? What you've done is you've elevated yourself by yourself. You're not waiting for the attorney or the HR person to say, okay, Jane, take the next step up, right? You're promoting yourself. And then pretty soon, what you're going to do is just suggest, well, how about changing my title? Right now, I've been to five trials. All right, why don't we give me a different title? And the title will be senior trial paralegal. And I'll bet you that the firm will go for it simply because they can get more money for you from you. From the client for you is what I'm trying to say. Okay. So, what you need to do is you need to bring the revenue advantage to the firm. This is how much more you can get for me if you promote me and give me a title. Okay. And this is what I bring to the table. And if you start documenting your achievements to the powers that be, they're going to take notice. Believe me, they're going to take notice. That's how I made it up to paralegal manager. I kept saying, if we do this, then this will happen. And the firm went with me on it. And before I knew it, I was one. Okay, I was one. But that's how you have to do it. But people say, well, you have to promote yourself. And then they say, well, how do you do that? Well, you go around the office and knock on doors and get work. No, wrong. Okay, start learning how to promote yourself in a systematic way. That's what you need to do and move up that ladder. Very simple. And I talk a lot about that.
Well, that's really
And
great there, and let's give the other book the same attention there, the Paralegal's Job Search Handbook. So, what are some of the things that are in there? I guess they're obviously, well, I'm assuming, looking for a job. They may be at a current job, I suppose. But what are some of the tools that the handbook kind of highlights that will help a paralegal secure that dream job?
one of the things that paralegals miss is not utilizing their network. And that is one of the best ways that you can find a job. The statistics show, or LinkedIn shows, that 40% of the people who are referred will get the job, okay, over and above people who just answer an ad. It's the referral. Okay, well, gee, John seems to think that I do a great job. So what happens is you need to utilize your network. Now, some people feel like you do, well, I don't want to impose, I don't want to ask them, but I'll tell you something. If you go to somebody in your network and you say, gee, JP, I'm looking for a job. Do you know anybody who's looking? Well, I'll tell you something. When paralegals are on the job and they're thinking about leaving, do they run down to HR and say, hey, guess what? I'm thinking of leaving, right? They don't do that. What they do is they confide in their best friend on the job. And so that person knows that there's a position coming up, right? So you have to learn how to network. You have to learn how to use the groups in LinkedIn. You have to learn how to reach out to people and not have any shame about it. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. So utilizing your network, joining the groups on LinkedIn, going to bar association meetings, going to paralegal meetings, because once you start talking, those are the people who are going to remember that you're looking for a job. And I'll bet you, in fact, I'm going to bet you 25 cents, right? Okay, 25 US cents, okay, that you'll get a job that way over and above you that you will by answering an ad in Indeed, for example, okay, where hundreds of people have answered that ad. So they're all kinds of different ways of finding a job, okay? And that's what we call the hidden job market. It's the hidden job market. It's not necessarily out there on some ad where hundreds of people are answering. So I talk about that in the book. I also talk about, I give you a glossary if you're an entry-level paralegal, so that you land on your first day in your first job understanding the terminology. Hey, what are hot documents? What is a motion to show cause? What is, and I give you all these different terms that you may not learn unless you're on the job. Well, you're going to arrive on the job way ahead of your competitor, okay? Because you already understand the lingo. Job lingo means a lot. So I talk a lot about that. I talk about how to take a face-to-face interview because we all do it on Zoom now, and little things like don't sit in the most comfy chair. Why in the lobby? Why? Because it's very difficult to get out of that chair when somebody comes to, right? And you're moving and you're trying to get out of that comfy chair with the big pillow, right? And so you look kind of awkward. So I go even into minutia detail such as that. It's 320 pages long, so there's got to be something in there, okay, that you can learn besides cover letters and how to write a resume.
And you also have, the Estrin report, and
Mhm,
maybe kind of touches as well on, because you were saying earlier, you don't need these traditional like one
mhm.
to two page resumes anymore, Instagram, but a website perhaps, or being involved, blogging. Like, what do you think in
No, you
the
do need
legal
the
world?
resume. Yeah, I didn't mean to mislead you. You do need the resume because most firms are not as progressive as maybe the top 10% are. So you do need the resume. I'm not saying that. But here's how I think it's going to go. The resume is going to go away. It's going to disappear, and we're all going to go to LinkedIn. That's what's going to happen. We're just going to give, here's my LinkedIn profile, okay? And that's what people are going to go to. Um, Again, I'm going to bet you 25 cents on that. Okay. In another 5 years, you're not going to see resumes. You're going to see, go to my LinkedIn profile. That's how popular that is. So that's the future. That's the future of the resume as I see it.
Perfect. So as we kind of get to our end of our time here, Sherry, maybe if you have any one do and one don't that maybe we haven't touched on, or even if you want to strengthen what you've already shared for paralegals kind of navigating through the job market.
Don't take a job that you have doubts about. Don't take a job. If you're going home after the interview and you're thinking, yeah, but, okay, but that tells you don't take that job. Because if I'm placing you and you go home and you say, yeah, I'm going to take that job, but I'm going to see you in 3 months. I don't want to see you in 3 months. Okay. I don't want you back. I love you. I love you to death, but I don't want you back. So don't take a job that you really don't want. On the other hand, don't hang in there for every single solitary thing that you think that you have to have. Find out where it is that you can compromise. Is it salary? Is it the commute? Is it I'm going to be a hybrid instead of a full paralegal? What is it that, and where is it that you can compromise? And lastly, the biggest thing that I can tell you is follow your heart. Don't be crying in the shower every morning. Follow your heart. If what you really want to do is entertainment law, go after entertainment law. It may be that you have to leverage different specialties. It may be that you have to take certain courses, but always follow your heart. Go after the specialty and the job that you want, and you're going to be pretty happy. I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
Well, thank you so much, Sherry, for taking the time and joining us. I hope I'm not 50 US cents poorer, but because these days it could be worth a lot more in Canadian dollars.
True.
So to
True.
wrap up, what final piece of advice do you have for anyone listening so that they can become a phenomenal paralegal? And once again, thank you so much, Sherry, for taking the time and speaking to us from the other side of not the world, but
Yeah.
from
A long way away.
California.
Yeah. Long way away, and it's sunny here today. So, the best advice that I can give you is to stay ahead of the curve. Okay, take the continuing legal education, stay ahead of the curve, know what trends are coming up, know what you're supposed to be paid, know what the market, is calling for, know if you're at the top of your game, and know if you're, not quite, if you're not quite there. But I guess the best thing I can do is to tell you to take charge of your own career, and you'll never be sorry. Just take charge.
Perfect. So thanks once again for taking the time and joining us, and thanks for everyone for tuning in, and thanks to all the sponsors that we have that are supporting our endeavors. I would wish you all the best, and once again, bye for now.